Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to smoke brisket in a pellet smoker. All right, so we're going to be using the Oklahoma Joe's pellet smoker. We're going to start by opening this hopper lid up and filling it up with pellets. So I've gone with some cherry flavored pellets, but if you've got another favorite flavor for brisket, go ahead and use that. But for now, we're going to shut this lid. Then we are going to turn this on. We're going to turn our dial to 110 Celsius or 230 Fahrenheit. And then we'll press our button. And that's just going to go through its preheating cycle. And that'll take around 10 to 15 minutes until it displays a temperature. All right, so we've got this big, beautiful brisket I picked up from my butcher at Austral Meat. This one weighs around 8 kilos. And we're just going to start by taking any excess fat and silver skin off the bottom. Now this one's only a marble score 2+, so nothing crazy, no fancy Wagyu. And you always want to keep in mind when trimming a brisket, you want to be trimming it in a way that it's going to be even on both ends, nice, aerodynamic, and that's going to give you a nice even cook throughout both ends of the brisket as well. And as we come over here, this is where the flat and the point meet. We're just going to round this edge off and sort of scoop any fat off in between the point and the flat. There's not too much there. I'm not going to dig down too deep in it, but if there's heaps in there, I'll try and scoop a bit out. All right, now I'm happy with this bottom side. We're going to flip it over. And I can already see this side here, this thin part, I'm going to square up straight away. Any of this off trim we'll tidy up a bit later. We can make burgers out of the leaner stuff, and any of this fat we can render down to use later on. And we're just going to tidy up this side here, and we're probably going to square off this thin end of the flat as well. And then any of this top fat we just want to be trimming down to around 2 to 4 mil thick. Alright, now I'm really happy with this brisket trim. That is nice, evenly trimmed. Both ends are relatively even, so we're going to get a nice even cook out of this brisket. And if you're really new to this, you're always better off leaving more fat on than taking more off. The more fat is going to help keep it nice and moist. If you trim too much fat off, it's potentially going to dry out. But for now, we're going to give this a light coat in yellow mustard and then season it up. Alright, so the yellow mustard is just going to help our rubs stick to the meat and fat. I want to give that a nice light coat all over. And honestly, a 50-50 mix by weight of kosher salt and cracked black pepper would do the trick. But I'm going to be using a combination of steak shooter and beef bounce. Or if you've got another favourite combination or rub on its own, feel free to use that. But for now, I'm just going to give this a nice base coat of steak shooter, and then we'll top it off with beef bounce. And now this is ready to go in the smoker once it's up to temperature. And I'm just going to put all of our trim aside in a bowl in the fridge, and we'll come back to deal with that later in the video. All right, now we are at temperature. I'm going to open this up. We'll have a quick look inside, but I don't want to leave it open too long, otherwise we'll drop temperature. So we've got our bottom grate and then 2 racks above that, so heaps of cooking space. You could easily fit 3 full briskets, potentially even 4. I'm going to cook on this middle rack, so I'm going to take this top rack out. To make cleanup easier, I'm just going to put a couple of foil trays straight underneath where our brisket's going to be. Then we will get this beautiful brisket in. This looks absolutely incredible. I'm loving the shape of it already. And then we'll close our lid and let that smoke away. All right, so this is actually my first time using this pellet, so I'm very keen to see how long a full hopper of pellets is going to last. It's now just after 10 p.m, so the plan is to run this overnight at that 230 Fahrenheit or 110 Celsius range. And that's the beauty of having a pellet smoker, right? You should be able to have a good night's sleep and not worry about it. So this brisket is going to be a really good test for it. And all I'm going to do now is top that hopper up one more time, then I'm going to leave it overnight, and we'll be back to check on it once we hit morning. All right, we've been running for almost 10 hours. I haven't topped up the hopper. There's still plenty of pellets left, which is a good sign. And now we'll have a look at our brisket. Wow, that is looking incredible. Look how soft that is. All right, let's start checking the internal temperatures. It's feeling really nice there. Feeling really good there. I reckon this is done. It's good timing. Tiny bit of resistance right up this end of the point, but I reckon that'll get there during the rest. It's still super soft. Alright, well I'm glad I didn't leave it any longer, because this is feeling perfect. And that bark, sensational. We can get this out. Alright, so I've got some foil ready. We're going to lay our brisket down on top of that. And We're going to give this around 5 to 10 minutes just to steam off and stop that cooking process. And that way it won't overcook when we wrap it up to rest it, which is what we're going to do next. So we'll come back once this has had a chance to steam off. All right, and those trays we had under our brisket, all of that rendered fat. Just want to pour over the top of our brisket before we wrap it up and rest it. Now this is plenty in this tray, so I'm probably going to save the other tray and jar it up. And honestly, that will do. And now we'll wrap the brisket up nice and tight. And I'm also going to sit it in a tray. And now I'm going to get this in the Canberra to rest. Alright, and I'm going to let that brisket rest for around 4 to 6 hours. While that's happening, we're going to do the shutdown cycle on this pellet. So we'll hold the shutdown button for 3 seconds. And that's saying to drain the hopper. We've got our bucket to catch the pellets underneath. And then we've just got a handle on the side here, which is going to drain the hopper. I'll show you what that's done. So all of those pellets have now fallen into the bucket, and we can save those pellets for the next cook. And now we've drained our pellets, we've got around 26 minutes left of this shutdown cycle. That's going to get rid of all the pellets that are left in the worm. It's also going to do a high temp burn off, which will burn off any grease inside the smoker as well. And then it's also going to automatically power down after it's finished the cycle too. So we'll let that go, and we'll come back to slice this brisket once it's had a good rest. All right, now before we slice this brisket, we're going to sort out our trim from yesterday. So I've got a pot here, all the fat is going to go in there. And then we want to get some meat, around 80% lean meat, 20% fat. That's going to go back into our bowl, and we're going to mince that up soon. Alright, now we've sorted that trim, we've got a pot of fat. All I'm going to do is chuck a lid on that. That's going to go onto the stovetop on low heat, and that fat's just going to render down for a few hours. Once it's all rendered down, I'm just going to strain it and jar it up. And now the trim we've got in our bowl, this is around 80% lean meat, 20% fat. All we're going to do is mince this up, and that'll make the perfect burger mince. Alright, now we're just going to put my little mincer together. This is just a cheapie I picked up off Amazon a few years ago. I don't think they sell them anymore. And a handy tip, put your mincer parts in the freezer, and that way when you grind your mince you'll get a good grind, because if it's a hot day the mince is just going to go mushy as it passes through that worm, knife and plate. Now we'll get the knife on. We're going to be doing a coarse grind today, so I'm going to put the coarse plate on. Alright, now we'll get a bowl under there, turn this on and start feeding our mince through. Now you always want to make sure you've got meat constantly feeding through that worm. You don't want to leave it too long in between and have that worm running dry, otherwise it's going to heat up and it's going to potentially mush any meat that's coming through. But this is a really good grind, perfect for burgers. You could even use that for pastas or anything else you want, but I'm going to vac seal that up, and I might even use that in a future video. Alright, and after a 5.5 hour rest, let's unwrap this and slice it up. Have a look at the bark on this brisket. Alright, first brisket on the pellet smoker. I'm super excited. Look at that jiggle on it. We're going to slice it right about here. Oh wow. Look at that. That is so unbelievably juicy. Wow. Alright, so we know what we need to do with the flat. This is the flat side. We just need to keep slicing it the same way we just did. Alright, and as we're getting right into that flat, absolutely loving that bark. Still juicy as. Absolutely passes that bend test. To be honest, this is probably a little bit over for my liking, but I'd rather it over than under. Seriously, that is a really nice looking brisket. Alright, now we're left with the point end. We can see the point muscle is coming over and around this way. So now we just want to rotate it, and we want to take some slices off like this. And that's where my favourite slices come from, those fatty point slices. And then once we don't have much of that muscle left, we're just going to follow that fat seam. We can sort of knock out any excess fat, and then we can just simply dice these pieces up. Seriously, have a look at that. They can be our burnt ends, and then we can rotate back and continue slicing this the way we were slicing the flat earlier. Look at that, juicy from end to end, tender as. Let's have a quick taste. Alright, it looks good, it smells good, let's see if it tastes good. That's really good. Now that is a good brisket. Now I will say I'm not picking up as much of a smoky flavour as opposed to if I smoked it in the drum or especially the offset, but that is an amazing brisket nonetheless, and I'd be happy to eat that every time I have brisket. So there you have it. There's how to smoke brisket in a pellet smoker. Just to recap, I simply just ran this one overnight at 230 Fahrenheit or 110 Celsius, and it took around 10 hours until it was probing tender, just the way I like it. Once it was done, we let it steam off for those 5 to 10 minutes before we wrapped it up with that rendered beef fat, and we let it rest for around 5.5 hours. And the end result, as you've seen, was an amazing brisket. It was super barky, but if you don't like a really barky brisket, you can always wrap it during the cooking process. It's completely up to you. This is just how I like to smoke briskets lately. And then we didn't let any of that off trim go to waste. We made some mince and we made some beef tallow out of all of that off trim. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel. But for now, that's the end of the video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.